Out comes my son. Colorless, motionless, noiseless. My chiropractic head kicks in. I said, I better check him. So I said, Aaron, hold him. She held him. I palpated him. I made the adjustment, gave him back to the doctor. Up they went. After about 45 minutes, I went to the NICU. As I'm looking through the window into the room, I could see the doctor and the nurse standing at the bassinet, not doing anything. And my first thought was, he died. So I busted in, no gown, no gloves, no mask. I busted in, and as I'm approaching the bassinet, the closer I get, the more and louder I can hear crying. And I look in the bassinet, and there's my kid bawling his eyes out. I said, doctor, what happened? He says, we don't know. You can see him breathing, you can see him moving. His body's completely perfused, you can take him. So I grabbed that little kid, and as I was leaving the NICU, I thought to myself, what if the only reason I became a chiropractor was to deliver that one adjustment?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the None of Your Business podcast. And today we have a very special treat. A dear friend who's making a huge impact all around the world through this little thing called chiropractic. Today, we are blessed and honored to have with us the 6th president of the Sherman College of Chiropractic in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Dr. Jack Bourla. Welcome to None of Your Business.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to spend this time with you. I want to start out, though, and it's super cliche. It's super cliche, but we have an audience of people who may not know you, an audience of people who may not know you watching along in the podcast. But the cliche story for every chiropractor is, how did you get into chiropractic?
So my parents are immigrants from Algeria, North Africa. And my father heard that the streets in America were paved with gold, and he wanted some. So he dragged my mother in a boat in a ship, to America. And they made their way to the West Coast, to San Francisco, where my sister and I were born and raised. As a Jewish boy, I really only had two choices as to what I was going to do in my life. I could become an attorney or a medical doctor. And I did not want to be someone that was going to argue all day long, because that's what marriage is for. So I said, I'm going to be a medical doctor. And I was going to be a cosmetic surgeon. We had a cosmetic dentist earlier. A cosmetic surgeon for disfigured kids. Back when I was a kid, we had these things called magazines. I don't know if you can imagine this, but paper that you looked at. But almost every year, Life magazine would have an expose on disfigured kids. And it broke my heart. And so I thought, I'm going to be the one to save these kids. And so I was going to go to medical school, do the specialty, and I was going to join Doctors Without Borders, fly all over the world, taking care of these kids for free. And that was my goal. I went to college. I did my bachelor's work in cell molecular biology. I did a master's work in physiology, behavioral biology, and I'm on my way to medical school. And I met a girl. Totally derailed me. She was a little bit older than I was. She was divorced with 2 kids, so I had a choice. Do I want to join this new family, or do I go to medical school? And I chose the family, so I didn't go to medical school. But I taught for 2 years at San Francisco State University in the biology department. I was a family planning counselor. I was the head administrator at the Stanford University Blood Center. And while I was there, I met these 2 medical directors who said, we're going to start a new biotech company, and we want you to run it. I said, that's awesome. They said, can you do this? I said, yep. Can you do this? Yep. They asked me all these can you do's, and I said yes to every single one. And everyone's asked me, have you done? Because the answer would have been no. But I could figure it out. We heard that similar theme earlier today. So I worked in biotech for 10 years, did real well back in the 80s. They paid us gobs of money, gave us stock like it was candy. And I was a director. I was the youngest director in the company. And my boss was a senior vice president, and he was going nowhere. So I said, I'm stuck here. What am I going to do? So I cashed out all my money, and I did the dumbest thing in my life that I could ever think of. I bought 3 restaurants. So I had 3 restaurants. I had a very, very elegant, Michelin-rated downtown financial district of San Francisco, fine dining restaurant. I had a very eclectic supper club on the peninsula, and then I had a Chinese restaurant. And people say, why would you have a Chinese restaurant? And the answer is quite simple. When you want good Chinese food, who do you ask? A Jewish guy. So I had a Chinese restaurant. Did that for 5 years, hated it. It was miserable. And after 5 years, I'm 39 years old, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with my life? I knew I wanted to work with people and help them, but I didn't quite know what that was going to look like. And my first wife, I've had 12. No, I've not. My first wife had a great story. Woke up one New Year's Day. We had gone out New Year's Eve. Everything was fine. Woke up New Year's Day, could not move her legs. So I put her in the car, took her to the emergency room. They admitted her. They imaged her. They medicated her. They injected her. And by 3:30 in the afternoon, no difference. They said, that's all we can do. Go home and see what time we'll do. So we went home, and on New Year's Day, I always call my friends to wish them a Happy New Year, like I do for you. And I was talking to my buddy Rob, and I told him what happened. He says, why don't you call my chiropractor? And my question was, what's a chiropractor? He says, well, he does this, he does that. And I said, what is a chiropractor going to do that this modern medical facility couldn't do? He says, I don't know. Call him anyway. He helped me. I said, it's New Year's Day. He says, call him. So I call the guy. He answers his phone on New Year's Day. I can hear kids in the background. So the first thing I'm thinking, he's either very desperate for business or he's crazy. Or maybe both. And I explained to him what my predicament was. I said, my buddy Rob, your patient, said you might be able to help me. He says, I can't really do anything until I see her. I said, well, I understand that. I said, when can we see? He says, I'll see you at 5:30. I said, great. Where's your office? He told me, I said, I'll see you tomorrow at 5:30. He said, no. I'll see you today at 5:30. And I said, but doctor, it's New Year's Day. He says, I know what day it is, but I took an oath. And those words, I took an oath, have never left the back of my mind. 5:30, I bring her there. I'd never been to a chiropractic office in my life. I had no idea what to expect. He greeted us, very cordial. He did the most thorough consultation I've ever heard. Did a very thorough examination, and he says, I think I can help her. And he put her on this table that went up and down. I thought we were in a circus. Table was going up and down. Then he gets on top of her. And I said, dude, what are you doing? He says, trust me. And he did this thing, which we now know as an adjustment, and I heard that sound, and she walked out. I thought, holy smokes, if he can help her, I've got all kinds of issues. Mostly, I had all kinds of. So she and I went every Friday at 4 o'clock. We never missed an appointment unless we were out of town or his office was closed. And it wasn't because we had neck pain or back pain or sciatica. It's because our bodies functioned better, and we understood that. 39 years old, I'm thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? In the San Francisco Bay Area, there were two schools, chiropractic colleges, Life West and Palmer West. I picked Palmer West, and the very first day that I sat in that classroom and heard the information I was being told, I said I should have been here when I was 22. So I was the oldest guy in my class, graduated the youngest guy in my class, because I sucked the youth out of everybody. It was awesome. I had all the science background, so I was really well prepared. I graduated valedictorian in my class. That's like the greatest grade point average. They give you a little medal that you can wear. I used to wear the medal to Starbucks. You know what they say? $2.50 for that cup of coffee. They didn't care that I was valedictorian, nor did my patients ever care. My patients wanted to know, can you help me, and do you even care about me? And I was able to answer yes to those. I had a fantastic practice for 25 years.
That's amazing, too. Let's talk about this idea of starting anew. Super successful biotech, super successful but not happy in restaurants.
Yeah.
And then you decide at 39. How many people out there are like, well, it's too late for me? Like I've reached this point. It's too late for me. I can't start something new. I can't figure it out. Tell us about that decision. How did that weigh on you, and how did you navigate that, being the oldest person in your class?
Yeah, it's only too late when you tell yourself it's too late. It's never too late. As long as you've got a pulse, you can breathe, and you have a desire. And I had this desire that I had carried with me for many, many years to want to help people. It was just in a different format. And like the doctor said earlier, I was not going to fail. Was it tough? Absolutely, it was tough. At 39, I didn't have the energy of a 22-year-old. But I had the desire, and the desire is what carried me through. I made a point of every day telling myself, this is my day. This is my day to shine. This is my day. Not arrogantly. I'm convincing myself, not convincing somebody else. And the 3.5 years, which were grueling, went by so fast because I made a point of enjoying every single minute, knowing that I was now going to be able to go into business for myself, doing what I want to do for people whom I want to serve, because I identified who my ideal client was. I knew what my target market was, and so I just played in that market. And that's all I did. So imagine waking up every day saying, I don't have to go to work today, I get to go to work today. And that's what I did. Because I developed this mindset that I am making a decision. It was a sacrifice for my family. I never saw my wife and kids because I was studying all the time. But the sacrifice paid off because it gave me the freedom, both time and financial, to do the things that I wanted to do. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Like we asked Wing earlier, you graduate.
Yep.
How old were you when you graduated?
42.
42. Open up your practice. Line out the door.
Oh, yeah. I had 2 lines.
2 lines right out the door.
Yeah.
Did you ever have doubts when you were getting started?
Yeah.
Did they do the right thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I had this, the office was beautiful. My wife had designed it. It was an African theme. We had animal skin curtains, and I had 7-foot tall giraffes and masks and spears, because we wanted to think big. So we had this beautiful office, and I'd get there in the morning, I'd open the door, I'd look and say, this is a beautiful office, and I was waiting, because hey, I'm valedictorian. They should be coming to me. They weren't coming. I had 1 line from my off, 1 telephone line. It would ring, it was usually my mom, and I'd say, Mom, hang up, I got 1 line, you might be blocking a line. And I waited, and so I said, you know what, after 3 months, they're not coming to me, I better go to them. So I took a map, put a push pin where my office was. I drew a 5-mile radius around my office, and I vowed to myself I was going to knock on every single door and introduce myself. Now, I'm extremely good looking, but I'm not stupid. So I said, I'm not going to do this alone. So I got myself a black Labrador puppy named Pluto. And Pluto and I went and knocked on every single door, because if they weren't going to talk to me, they're going to talk about the dog. And they did. So it was a great entree. So suddenly people started coming. And by the way, if they weren't home, I had those, those door hangers, like pizza, that annoy you. I had those. I would hang them on the doorknob, and people started to come in and started to call, and they became patients. And then they would say, you know what, my company's having a health fair. Why don't you be the chiropractor? So I started doing company talks, and then I started doing community talks. And before you know it, I had this beautiful practice of only the people I wanted to see. And I wanted to see women between the ages of 30 and 60. Those are called sandwich moms. They're sandwiching between 2 generations, their kids and their parents, taking care of them. And the last thing they want is to have them or their families not be well, because they love their time. So that's who I focus on. I rarely saw their husbands. Once in a while, I didn't want to deal with men, because men, first of all, they never make appointments. They're stinky. They think they know it all. So I wanted the women and their kids. And that, if you came to my office at any day and you sat at my reception, you say, that's who he serves.
So you go through your career, very successful practice. You retire.
Retired, yeah.
And then what? Go back into restaurant? What did you do?
No. So my wife wanted to live on a lake, and we had some friends who lived in Idaho.
Yep.
So we went to visit Idaho. We found this house on a lake, and we bought this lake house, and our own dock, and it was beautiful. So we had imagined ourselves living there. And I heard through the grapevine that Sherman College in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is, I didn't go there, but I supported them financially because I believed in what they do. I heard they were looking for a new president, and I thought, well, that's a great opportunity. And then I got a call from a friend of mine, our friend Grant, who said, hey, Sherman's looking for a new president. I said, I knew that. The previous president was a dear friend of mine. And he said, I nominated you. And I said, dude, I thought we were friends. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm retiring. I got a house on the lake. I'm going to, write books and things like that. And he said, no, I think you should do it. I said, I'm not going to do it. So I talked to my wife and our kids, and I said, this is an opportunity. They said, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to say no. So I applied. And so I went through this process of you were on the committee who interviewed me. And there were 6 of us left at the very end. And I'll never forget, one Sunday afternoon, you called me. I don't know if you remember this. You called me and you said, I'm calling to let you know that we've selected you to be the 6th president at Sherman College. And I said, Sean, I want you to be very honest with me. Do you remember this conversation?
I remember the conversation.
I said, I want you to be very honest with me. He said, what's that? I said, I know there were 6 of us, and you selected me. Did the other 5 drop out, or did you just really select me? And you said, no, we selected you. And I made the commitment to come to Spartanburg, South Carolina, from the San Francisco Bay Area.
How old were you when you became the president at Sherman College?
Way too old.
You were 42 when you started practice.
Yep, I was 42. I retired when I was 67.
Okay.
And I came right then.
So again, another hey, you've never run an educational institution of professional development.
Nope.
So you just decide in my 60s, I'll just do this thing. Were you afraid?
Absolutely.
Tell us about, like, how do you overcome that? How does somebody decide to step into something? Because we always pursue comfort. We like you had said, oh, sure. Can you do this? Yes. So because if I know, like, oh yeah, I could do a podcast. If somebody was like, can you do this other podcast? Yeah, sure. We had Jimmy up here earlier. So if somebody was like, hey, could you fill in? Could you speak? Could you do this panel? Yeah, sure. But if they were like, hey, can you drive the monster truck? I would be like, well, I don't know. Like, and not only do I not know, I probably would convince myself that I don't want to. And it's not that I don't want to, it's again because I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome this? Like, I don't even know what in the world I'm doing, but I'm just going to do it.
You know, when the cause is big enough, you step into it. And I saw the cause of what Sherman College could represent for humanity. I know, again, most of us think of chiropractors as neck pain, back pain, sciatica, when in fact it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, are you enabling this human being with whom you have an interaction to express their life fully? That for me was a much bigger cause than am I afraid. I knew I also had great support. I don't think that any of us should ever try to do anything without great support. So I had support from my family, I had support from my friends, I had support from my colleagues, and I had support from the college because they wanted this college to grow. So for the last 2.5 years, I've been at this college every morning waking up so eager to get onto that campus. Number one, I love the kids. Well, they're not kids, but I love these students. I love our faculty. I love our staff. But the most important thing is I love our cause. And the cause is let's create doctors of chiropractic who can go out into the communities and begin to change the face of the community, begin to change the attitude of the community, because we know that when someone is expressing life fully, they're a much better version of themselves. So maybe if you come to me and you're my patient and I make the corrections in your body functions at a higher level, you might be a better husband, a better boss, a better mayor, maybe the better president of the United States, maybe the world leader. So when we do things with the body and optimize its function and that person becomes a better version of themselves, we've made a better society. That's what I'm looking for every single day.
In essence, as the president of a college, you act as the CEO.
Yep.
A college pretty much around the country operates, most of them operate in a not-for-profit realm.
Yeah.
But as we have heard from other guests here on the podcast, even not-for-profits need to operate as a business.
Correct.
So you're coming in as the CEO of a business that ultimately is covered by this concept of being not-for-profit, which is very difficult, right? Like, the reason why we have business
is to make
profit. And now we have a business that's expressly not supposed to make money. In addition to that, you have hundreds of employees that you didn't pick.
Correct.
So you get to come in and lead all these people that you didn't even pick, and you need to turn this around. Tell us some of the business challenges that you have had to face during your time at Sherman College.
Fortunately, we are very liquid financially, so I have not had a lot of financial issues. I've had cultural issues, which we've overcome. Oftentimes you'll go into a new culture and they expect that you're going to fire everybody. And mine was not to fire, mine was to look at the strengths of the people and then maybe shift their strengths into different departments to maximize their efficiencies. Personalities are always a fun thing to deal with. So I have 105 different personalities I have to deal with. The one expression that I cannot tolerate is, well, that's how we've always done it. If you say that to me, you have pretty much 5 seconds to pack up your bags and go, because we're not going to put up with that. I don't want people to say no if I ask them to do something without first thinking about it. As a society, I'm afraid that we're stepping away from critical thinking, which is sad, but I don't let people make emotional decisions without having to give it some logic and reason first. So it's always been the people. But I have a way with people, fortunately. I don't know why. My wife thinks I'm nuts, and she's right. But I have a way with people, and I can get the most out of them because I treat them with respect and dignity. And I try to bring out the best of everybody. If I can't do that, then I'm going to ask people to go somewhere else. And we've done that. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. But it's necessary because the organization comes before the individual.
So one of the other things that I think that generally we're not that aware of outside of our own microscopic things. So whatever it is I do, like I think that, well, in my realm, in the legal realm, if I'm a lawyer, there's all these problems.
Yeah.
In the accounting world, there's all these problems. And you stepped into this education world, and most of us have been in the education system at some point. We were in a school. The education system, though, in today's world, a lot of people feel like it is, if not broken, it is breaking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues with how we now transfer knowledge from one smart human being to another, because there's technology, there's all kinds of advances. What are some of the challenges that education faces in general? But then, specifically, what are some of the challenges in chiropractic education?
Sure. So there's this expression called the education cliff, where we're seeing a decrease in undergraduate students enrolling in colleges, which means our pool from which to draw has decreased. But we're such a niche market. We have such a specialty within chiropractic that we only accept the people that we know will do well. So we don't accept everybody who applies, which is unlike other schools. There are schools that will just take anybody who applies. For us, you have to have qualifications. And if you don't meet the qualifications, you're not going to get in. We'll help coach you on how to improve so you might have the qualifications. But if you don't have them, you're not going to get in. So there's a decrease in number of people going to colleges. The demographics have changed. Chiropractic used to be a male-dominated profession. Now we're around 56% women on our campus. And so we've had to change our marketing. It has to be softer. We have to, I'm learning a lot from you in terms of videos and how that is going to appeal to certain groups. So we're looking at who do we want, how do we position our campus to attract them, and then how do we make them thrive while they're there. So there's a whole decreased number, but we really want only the best of the best anyway. So there's 8.3 billion people on this planet. I can't have all of them on our campus. I can only have the right ones on our campus.
What about the challenges that come, as a smaller institution relative to fundraising? We've talked about that in the not-for-profit world, which in essence is still marketing and selling. And how do you get people? Let's say even if you were a chiropractor, of course you might want to give, like you said, well, I had supported this because of the vision. Yeah. What about somebody who's not a chiropractor? What would be a good reason for them to be supporting you? If
they understood the message. And so what we do is we use stories. And I have a personal great story. If we have time, I'll share it about Evan. So I have a 15, almost 16-year-old son. I know what you're thinking. Old guy, yeah, stud. I got it. So I'm married to an honest-to-God rocket scientist. My wife works at NASA. She's responsible for some lunar projects. I tease her all the time about the man on the moon never happened. We get into huge fights, but it's awesome. She was getting her master's in space engineering at the International Space University, which is a college that rotates campuses every year. So the first year was in Beijing, China. The second year was in Strasbourg, France. And she's pregnant with our son while she's in Strasbourg, France. And so we would call every night on Skype. For you younger people, Skype is the old person's FaceTime. So we would have Skype. And one night she says to me, I would like to, when I come home, I'd like to have a home birth. And I said, it's your body. I don't want to argue with a pregnant woman. That never ends well. So I said, whatever you want to do. I said, let's do this. Let's independently research midwives in our area. We're up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And then we'll compare notes. And so the next night when we talked, we both picked the same midwife, which was one less fight, which was awesome. So when she came back, we went to the classes. It was every Wednesday night and all day Saturdays with other couples. And we learned about what it was like to have a home birth. And so our son was due on August 11th. And on July 30th, we're at the veterinarian's with one of our dogs at her water breaks. So what do most men, especially Jewish men, what do most Jewish men do when their partner with water breaks? Freak out is what I did. So I'm running around like a chicken without its head. She's calming me down as if I'm having the baby. And she says, call Rosanna, who was our midwife, let her know that the water broke and she'll advise us. So I called Rosanna in a panic and she says, look, you know what to do. Go home, we'll be there as soon as we can, right in the middle of another delivery. And it's 5:30 in the afternoon. So I take her home and we're doing all the breathing exercises, the leg exercises, moving her up and down. And her moans are getting louder and louder, and the intervals are getting shorter and shorter, creating even more stress in my life, because it's all about me at this point. So we're doing all things. We find 9:30, knock on our door. I open the door. There's 5 women at my front door, not selling me a magazine, which was awesome. It was the midwife team. So they came in, they took over. Rosanna did all the things, and she said, I need to to examine Aaron. I said, do whatever you got to do. She examines Aaron, and she says, she's fully dilated. This baby should come out. So we do more exercises. We do this, more of that. She examines her again. She says, we need to call an ambulance. The baby's had his first bowel movement, which is called meconium, which if it's aspirated into the lungs can cause irreparable damage to the lungs. So we call an ambulance, we transport to the hospital. Fortunately for us, there was a midwife in the emergency room, so our midwife is exchanging information with the midwife, and the midwife says to me, I need to examine your wife and also monitor the baby. I said, you do whatever you need to do to make sure that this woman and this child leave out of here safe. So they put this electrode on Evan's scalp, measuring, I think, his oxygen levels and his heart rate, whatever they were measuring, and she says to me, he is in grave danger. We need to call the emergency pediatrician. I said, I've got a direct line to God. Let's call him. I said, whatever we need to do. So she's doing her work, and suddenly this kid walks in with a white lab coat on. Looked like Doogie Howser from the TV show. I said, who's this guy? She says, that's the emergency pediatrician. I said, where's his dad? I said, this ain't working for me. So he comes in, and as he comes in, out comes my son, Evan. Colorless, motionless, noiseless. He's got these beautiful blue-green eyes that are kind of yellow-brown. He looked like a salamander. There was little to no life in this kid. I'd been present for my daughter's birth, so I knew what that looked like. This was nothing like that. They cut the umbilical cord. They give Evan off to Doogie Howser. Aaron has no idea what's going on. I said, listen, I'm going to go check on the kid. I'll be right back. I said to the doctor, give it to me straight. What's up? He says, I don't know. Apparently what happened was that the reason he wasn't coming out is part of Aaron's cervix was caught on his forehead. So every time she pushed out, this was going on for 10 hours. So he says, he's under the impression that maybe it's the meconium. So he says, I don't know what we're going to do. I said, what are the options? He says, he could die. I said, okay, that's not an option. What else you got? He could be here for many, many weeks. Depends on how much meconium and how we respond. I said, what's the plan? He said, the plan is we're going to take him up into the NICU, the neonatal ICU. We're going to work on him, and we'll give you a report back in a few hours. You go ahead and take your wife and get her settled. I said, before you do, I'd like her to hold him for just a second with what little life he had in him. He says, do it quickly. So I brought Evan over, and as I'm walking over to Aaron, my chiropractic head kicks in. And I'm thinking, 10 hours of this, what must his upper cervical spine look like? That first bone and second bone are right where the brainstem is, which is where all the regulation in the body takes place. I said, I better check him. So I said, Aaron, hold him. She held him. I palpated him. I made the adjustment, gave him back to the doctor. Up they went, and I got Aaron settled in the room. And after about 45 minutes, I went to the NICU. And the NICU is set up where you have a window that you look into. There's an airlock, and then you can see the room. As I'm looking through the window into the room, I can see the doctor and the nurse standing at the bassinet, not doing anything. And my first thought was, he died. So I busted in, no gown, no gloves, no mask. I busted in, and as I'm approaching the bassinet, the closer I get, the more and louder I can hear crying. And I look in the bassinet, and there's my kid bawling his eyes out. I said, doctor, what happened? He says, we don't know. But his APGAR score, which is a scoring system they use to rate babies, is 9+. You can see him breathing. You can see him moving. His body's completely perfused. You can take him. So I grabbed that little kid, and as I was leaving the NICU, I thought to myself, what if the only reason I became a chiropractor was to deliver that one adjustment? And that convicted me. I thought I was a good chiropractor before, but I became a convicted chiropractor for a cause. And the cause is, how many Evans are there out there who are not expressing life because the bones in their body are malfunctioning and operating as they should? That's when I became the convicted chiropractor. That's when my practice really took off. And that's when I said yes to the job of president of Sherman College of Chiropractic. Yeah.
That's a good story. Where's Coach Jimmy?
Yeah.
That's a good story.
I made it up, but you know.
So for anybody that's watching and participating,
Yeah.
one, how can they get involved with this mission,
So many ways.
this thing? Because also, too, it goes beyond just giving money.
Yeah, absolutely. Money's great. Money's great. Opportunity's better. We do this annual thing called the Lyceum. It's like a homecoming where we bring in speakers. Tim Story is going to be one of our speakers next year. We're bringing speakers that will help to inspire, motivate, create, educate our audience. We had 800 people attend our last Lyceum 2 weeks ago. By the way, this is when we gave David Meltzer his honorary chiropractic, doctor of chiropractic of humanities, which was a big thing for him, a bigger thing for us. Recommend speakers. I want to change it up. It's been way too formal. I want to change it up. I want to make it fun. I want to have a great band playing on Saturday afternoon.
So if anybody knows a
great
band, maybe we could get Bill Dorfman's daughter, or maybe Aubrey will come and
Aubrey can sing for us.
I hear she sings A Whole New World.
Yeah, fantastic point of view. I wish you could sing some funk, but that's just me. Come visit us. Become a speaker for our Lyceum. Refer students. You know, we are a tuition-driven college, so we are always looking for students. There's 2 young guys in the room. There's 3 guys. Darius is young too. Come on, D. You know, if someone says, I really want to help people with my life, send them to chiropractic college, send them to Sherman College of Chiropractic. Once they're there, they become my kids. Everybody has my cell phone. Everybody has my cell phone, including their parents. And I say, if you have any questions at all, you come right to me. And if I don't have the answer, I'm either going to lie to you or find somebody who can answer it for you. But we don't leave them hanging. I want parents, because it's a big ordeal. 3.5 years is intense. I want parents to know that their kids will be well taken care of at Sherman College.
I love it. I don't want anybody to forget about that story of Evan. Everybody has their own personal story that got you into this, into where you are today. And I hope that people will connect with you. I hope that people will support Sherman College of Chiropractic. And I hope that this is not the last time we see you on the None of Your Business podcast.
I hope, Bonnie, but can I give out my cell phone?
Absolutely.
My cell phone is 650-465-3889. 650-465-3889. You can text me. Don't call me because I'm not going to answer. I'm a millennial in wrinkled clothing. But if you text me, I'll get back to you usually within the hour. Don't send me funky pictures, James. Too late, Aubrey. If there's anything I could ever do for anybody, my heart is one of service. If I can help you, 650-465-3889. Text me and let me know who you are and that we met at the podcast. My job is to serve, and so I'll serve in any capacity that I can. No job is under me. I'll do anything I have to. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jack Bourla.
Thanks, Sean.